Hello, I'm a student of Bhikkhu Candana. This is just a reminder that he is a homeless monk, depending entirely on donations to live and share the Dhamma. If you want to help support Bhante, our teacher, please consider donating to this cause. Thank you and enjoy.
Culture can never justify inhumanity. Culture can never supersede ethics. Culture can never replace truth, kindness, love, compassion. There are things that are far superior to culture, any culture. And any culture that holds these universal values, then it can come close to being universal in its values itself. But it must obey these universal values. That doesn't know, that doesn't recognize race, that doesn't recognize color, region, history, all that temporary thing or series of things. Yes, from one culture to another, when you look at it from a narrow scope, you might think, okay, these are wild, these are brutal, these are things, but ultimately, when we look at it from a universal standpoint, by pulling back and reviewing it, looking at something, there needs to be a respect, an appreciation for something higher, something greater, something that considers wholesome return on everyone, for everyone. That means whatever this cultural norm or more or tradition is, it needs to not bring harm to another. This is key. This has also been at the backbone of every single evil thing that has happened in the name of culture or religion. Now, in our contemporary world, culture has somehow become a placeholder for universal values, like something that is unquestionable. So if it is part of this person's culture, then we can't say anything. We can't touch it. We can't put it under question. Why is that? Who made that into an accepted reality? That doesn't make sense. The Nazis had their own culture, you know? Legitimate culture, one would say. Criminals have a culture. There's a whole culture in the prison systems that has nothing to do with the outside world. When you go to a certain environment, certain neighborhood even, actual geographic place, location, there's, depending on who's running the show, as it were, in that area. Military has its own culture, of course. But what happens when these people come out of those cultures? Suddenly, they have to graduate, schools obviously, educational system, but let's say a person graduates from prison, meaning is released. Many people, if they spend a certain amount of time, it's very difficult for them to adjust. Military individuals as well. That's why so many people who go into, let's say, tour of duty, or you know, they go and enlist, oftentimes these individuals go back and re-enlist. Why? Not because necessarily of some value, of universal value, of justice, or no, usually it's because they have nothing else to look forward to other than what they are comfortable in experiencing, meaning that culture that they are quite familiar with and feel comfortable in. So many people make that their lifestyle. Why? Because it is safer for them to be there than in another culture. That's why when a person, an immigrant or a refugee, goes to another location, another country, moves somewhere, immigrates, where do they go usually? Where do they settle? They settle in a community, in a place where there are people of the same culture, who speak the same language, or at least have the same customs. So culture has its value, of course, and we have to acknowledge that. Cultures have good qualities, but what I'm trying to say is cultures also have some terrible qualities. So we have to be able to distinguish between the wheat and the chaff. Things that are usable, things that are useful, things that are healthy and helpful and enriching and beautiful for the whole humanity, and things that are absolutely poison. For example, when a culture says we are the chosen people, we are the chosen race, we have been selected by a higher power to be the superior race, that's mental sickness. That's evil. Why evil, though? You have millions of people who follow that. Well, it's evil because it also means that you are beneath me. It means because I'm selected, because I am the chosen one, the chosen people, whatever I do ultimately is more important. Whatever I want is more important. I come first, basically. Well, who does this in life? Where have we seen this type of behavior? In bullies, in schools, and everywhere else in your life. Co-workers or bosses, somebody thinks that they are entitled. That's what it is. You give yourself, and who gave them that? Who gave such a culture that they did? They write some books, they copy from other stories, and all of a sudden you have a book, and you can write anything you want. And then sell it and propagate that, and it's propaganda, and then everybody has to now accept you or believe that yes, depending on how much of a clout or influence you have. That is evil. That is sickness, mental sickness, which, for example, there's nothing good that comes out of that. And we see this now happening in the world. Not just with one culture, but in any culture that presumes that they are better than everyone else because they belong to this culture. So this, what I'm trying to do is highlight something horrid about cultures. This is not about just one culture. We need to expand our understanding when it comes to this wholesale acceptance of anything that is cultural, so it has to be okay. No, it's not okay. When my culture is undermining you as a person, as a culture, when my cultural beliefs and tenets and traditions and values, etc., are making you and everybody else be treated less than, then that is an evil quality of my culture. It should never be accepted, never be tolerated. So yes, there are aspects of culture that should never be tolerated. Never tolerate it. So tolerance doesn't mean tolerate every type of thing that you see. Absolutely not. Tolerance has to have wisdom attached to it. That's what we learn in Buddhism. And that's another thing. For example, I'm going to try to shed some light on the misconception that people have, or misconceptions that people have towards Buddhists, Buddhist monks, specifically monastics. I know from being on this planet and being on this path for over 3 decades, at least, how people presume that because you're a Buddhist, then you're a pacifist, that you're a good person. Oh, you're a Buddhist. Oh, he's a Buddhist monk. Oh, she's a Buddhist nun. Oh, so-and-so is a big Lama. So, oh, all of a sudden, there's this presumption that the Buddhists, because they're Buddhist, it's a Buddhist culture, then it's got to be all good. Everyone else over there, questionable, but these Buddhists are okay people. Who said that? Have you really closely associated with these Buddhist monks? I'm a Buddhist monk, by the way. What I'm saying is, simply because it is a culture, they don't get off the hook. They don't get a hall pass, or laissez-passer, or, carte blanche. It's okay, you have a pass, you can... No! And this is what happens when you have one culture that is getting away with murder, with oppression, for so many years, for over 70 years. What do you think is going to happen? It's going to blow up. When you squeeze a person, let alone a population, to such subhuman standards of living, where the most basic parts of, necessities of life are deprived, generation after generation of people. What do you think is going to happen? How are you going to get away with justifying it that, well, our culture is this, it says this? No, this doesn't have anything to do with the culture. This has to do with certain individuals within a culture that are benefiting from this. And not just that culture, but everyone else who are making huge amounts of money. So it comes back to ignorance, greed, lust, and hatred. So you see this all over. So this does not have much to do with any particular culture. That's also what I want to say. These are just labels. Underneath it all, the underlying current is always going to be greed, hatred, and delusion. Everywhere you look, that's what you see. So there's this misconception that this culture is good, that culture is bad. Why is a Buddhist always good? Who said that? Because, I'm not, denigrating or putting down any, I can speak openly about Buddhism, but in essence, it is a person's behavior that makes them good or bad. The intentionality behind their actions, which shows up in their behavior. So any particular culture could have within it individuals who are not holding up to themselves to the standards of universal values, including Buddhism. You might find pedophilia, you might find hypocrisy, which you find everywhere, of course, but Buddhism is no different. So it's one of the most disgusting things to see a monk who's playing the part of being, soft and, smiling, selling himself, or a nun selling herself in such a way where it's like so pleasing, so tolerant, so accepting, etc., etc. But is that how they really are? We need to go back to the behavior. So if a person is a monk, any kind of monk, any religious practitioner from any religion, any tradition, how is their behavior? Forget about the culture. It's like a person who's gone and gotten so many degrees, is a professor or an expert at reading people in the realm of social sciences, a psychologist, a therapist, somebody who is in the healing professions. Something happens and all of a sudden they become promoters of violence and killing. Well, I'm sorry, where did all that healing profession, all those universal values of love, compassion, kindness, acceptance, tolerance, where did all those go? They went out the window, that's where they went. Because you never were what you said you were. So what I'm saying is we need to give ourselves the permission to drop a culture or point the finger at a culture without fear of any repercussions, because we would just be pointing out the facts. As long as they're the facts, that's what we're seeing in the behavior. Never taking things at face value, never accepting something simply because others are accepting it. So what we're talking about is ethics, ethical values. What I began by speaking on universal values. It doesn't change if there are, or when other species from different universes or planes of existence come and visit us, when we evolve and we treat each other with respect, and they see that this is now a safe zone for them to come and visit. We're no longer living like savages, which by all intents and purposes we are, the way the world is unfolding. How you have these so-called educated people suddenly talking about or justifying war and killing of men, women, and children. This is not a safe place to be, this planet. This is quite a deranged place to be. And if you happen to be of an alien race, alien to us, and you're passing by or you want to come and visit, you will think twice. Change the direction, detour, and get out of the way. Get out of, just change your trajectory basically. Go somewhere safer, because these people are just plain nuts. There's no ethical standards. Ethics has a universal value. No one can actually accept in any culture, universally speaking now, ultimately, the killing of another being. It's ugly. People used to come to ask Lord Buddha as to what is a very good sacrifice. Kings who would normally sacrifice oxen, bulls, cows, deer, camels, horses, etc. And the more prized the animal, the more they were seen to be pleasing to the gods. At least that's what the priests, which, they make the money, they make the rules also. And you see it all over the place, right? In every religion you see this. So these people had been told, the kings who had the money and all that, the ruling class, they would come and ask Lord Buddha, so I've been donating this, I've been doing this, I've been sacrificing this many animals. I must be, scoring some good points somewhere, right? And Lord Buddha lists the true sacrifice, and he calls those disgusting. It's appalling. Even, he calls it, even the devas, the divine beings, heavenly beings that they are praying to, they look down upon. They look down upon, they're ashamed that people, human beings, are sacrificing other beings in the name or for these gods, these heavenly beings. These, they find that offensive. And Lord Buddha lists for them the top way, the best way to really offer a sacrifice. And guess what that is? It starts from where? It starts from the person upholding principles of ethics. First of which is not to kill. Not to kill. But if your entire religion is based on sacrifice, sacrificing other beings, and in fact sacrificing your own child in some cases, well, what is that? What is that notion? What kind of a God is that? Something's wrong here. So our cultural values need some reinvestigation, reevaluation, when it is depriving other beings of their life. Because that is pretty savage. That is not healthy. That does not have universal values in mind. And what I'm saying is, if we're going to be on the panel of other beings, other, alien forms, any other entities that do exist, by the way, if we need to, and we do, be considered as partners in life, in this cosmos, we need to show other beings that we are worthy to be called that. Allies, partners. We need to raise our ethical standards, which is terrible. You have human beings trying to eliminate other human beings simply because they have the means. You have trillion-dollar industry that specializes in the building of weapons. Trillion-dollar industry that specializes in killing beings through pharmaceutical drugs. They literally create drugs to eliminate people in the name of medicine. When there's plenty of medicine out there that you find in nature, simpler, cheaper, if not completely free ways, but they mute it. And they punish those good, conscientious, dedicated, courageous physicians and researchers who bring this knowledge forward. They're punished, discredited, sometimes completely disappeared. Same thing with scientists who have been saying again and again, come on, we have every few months we have a new iPhone. We have an actual movie playing, TV playing, internet, supercomputer in your hand. but we're still driving a car that has 4 wheels with so many parts, very attached to gravity, combustion engine, which is 150 years old. We still have to fly on an airplane? Really? The way that we did over 100 years ago, we still are doing that. So scientists, real scientists, inventors have come up with ways long time ago, and they make their invention for the sake of easing the difficulties and the challenges, the unnecessary challenges that we're faced with, the strife and the stress. Providing free energy. And then you see these individuals disappear. Why? Because they want us to still stay addicted to fossil fuels and hydrocarbons and other things, including these so-called joke of a recycling energy and things like that, these wind turbines, this and that, which they dump them because they don't last, because they also run on, some part of it is actually going to run on fossil fuels to get it started. These electric car business, which is another joke, it's a big sham, it's a big scam. But it's a money-making scam. The solar panels, this and that. The electrical cars, it's like so many parts of it come from all around the world, one car. Well, how are they getting them together? Shipping, this, that, trucks, this, planes. They're burning more fossil fuels for the promise of saving the planet. Meanwhile, the car is refueling itself with energy, with electricity that is run on fossil fuels. So where does the saving the planet part come in? Not to mention the lithium battery that they have packed this car with, which was collected by little children through caves, through mines, and endangering their lives with this poison. So you see how so much of what we're living through is based on lies. But it's so easy for us to accept it as culture. So there's nothing that is in isolation. In Buddhism we have this thing called Paticcasamuppada, which is the 12 links of dependent origination, or causal origination, which basically is saying how there's nothing that happens on its own. It's all caused by other factors. This thing comes to be because it has been conditioned by something else. In Pali it's called paccaya. So the results that we have in front of us are conditioned by our lack in ethics, in holding up universal values, in putting each other's needs first before our own. This is the first step to really evolving ourselves. We are not evolved. Not at all. Because we never seem to learn from what happened 22 years ago. Lies, this and that, and all of a sudden 1 million Iraqis die. Based on lies. For profit, for making money. And then you destroy a whole country, a whole generation. Look at the karma, the karmic impact that these people have brought upon themselves. And they die on a wheelchair, having made so much money for themselves and for others, but they suffer. Some of them go into a coma for 8 years, but the kind of coma where they're still conscious but they cannot do anything about it. They hear everything, they feel everything. They're in torture while still in the body. The lack in ethics, in morality, the lack in universal values for a culture has brought us to this point in history, in our civilization. And we need to do something about it. And we do start working on this, each one for ourselves. We have to. We have to save our species, to save the planet. Is already saved. The planet has gone through so many, states of what you would call disasters, but ultimately it is resilient. Nature is resilient, but we, on the other hand, are not. Healing is available to us. Awakening is available to us. Living in an enlightened state, enlightened culture, and there needs to be a world culture. And this is not the globalist agenda, by the way, that they want to squeeze everyone under one umbrella so that they can control. They had this thing that they were flaunting around, I think it was in the Vatican or something. Also the Buddhists they also went to Thailand and other places. There's this thing called agenda, which is not advertised that much. It's called Chrislam. I'm wondering what happened to 1 billion Hindus over there, or hundreds and hundreds of millions of Buddhists. What happened? But they're just trying to put it under one umbrella. No one's talking about this. I came across it by accident. That's why they were going to, even visiting like the chief patriarchs and Buddhists, for example, in Thailand, in other countries. But that's the whole globalist agenda, to squeeze everyone so you can be controlled as a whole single population by one single authority, where nations lose their sovereignty. And that's where we're headed. So all these things are basically not what they are purported to be, advertised to be. But this is not about politics, although every time I speak it's somehow connected, somehow some part of the politics comes in, because they have made it so. They have invaded everywhere, including in Buddhist circles, where you see a lot of ugliness, and it doesn't sit well with me when someone looks at a Buddhist monk and presumes them to be saints or something like that. And that is not fair. The culture does not mean anything. Check the behavior of the culture, just like you check a person's behavior before you say, oh, he's a nice guy or she's a nice woman. We don't know that yet. When you buy a car, what do? You just go and buy it? Because somebody told you about it? No, you need to test drive it. When you are getting yourself in a relationship, you just see the person and say, okay, let's get married, is that it? Or you at least have to go out a few times before you decide, well, this person is dateable. Let me try it. Let me, let's go out for a few more months. Let's go out maybe a month or a year. And then you see them in different lights. You see them in different situations. You see how they behave and react to situations. How they treat you. So if my culture is mistreating you, there's a problem. I cannot carry that culture with me untouched. I will change my culture, not by going outside and, protest. No, I will change it within me. I will be the anomaly. How about that? And the true path of awakening is all about individuals becoming anomalies individually to shake up the system. And that's what a Buddha is. That's what an awakened person is. That's what a revolutionary person is. A rebel, true rebel, is that. You don't go outside to try to harm anyone else. No. You go after yourself. You go after those negative biases that your culture, it could be the friends you have, it could be the actual culture from where your family, ancestors come from, for example, who you hang out with, the things that you are interested in, the habits you have, the lifestyle you have. That is your culture too. So there's cultures within cultures. Let's not forget. But the bottom line is, without getting confused, just go after the behavior, starting with your own. That's the message. Ethics comes first. Culture can never replace ethical values. And don't be fooled by a person's title, the robes they wear, the type of hairdo they have, what type of things that they put on their heads to designate them. Oh, this is that person. What type of ceremonies or rituals they're engaged in. None of that matters. How they treat you, how they treat people of other cultures, that is what matters. And in order for them to treat you as a human being, as an equal, if the requirement from them is that you join their culture, or to have something that is distinguishable or identifiable as theirs, there's a problem as well. Because what it is basically, you need to look like them. If I want you to look like me in order for me to love you and appreciate you, there's a problem. Okay? A huge one. And that can never sell itself as, or pretend it's, to be true love. Because it's completely conditional. And love is not conditional. I'm sorry. It's not situational. It's just pretending otherwise. And that's what we have. In monks, for example. You walk with, wearing robes, this and that, or any religious, not just Buddhist monks. You're fulfilling, quote unquote, a role, behaving a certain way, so then I'll accept you. No, 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 no. Despite your appearance, I need to have an acceptance of you and the fact that you are a human being, and you might be different, you might believe in other things, but that's beside the point. How do I treat you? How do you treat me? That's what turns it into universal value. If there is harm, it's not universal. If there's love, if you are treating me the way you like to be treated, then we're talking about some beautiful universal values. Culture can never replace truth, beauty, justice, and love. Basically, all of those things are embodied within ethics. Virtue. Culture can never be superior to virtue. It's the other way around. Virtue is the crown. And unless a culture is virtuous, it doesn't deserve that crown. It doesn't deserve to be respected.